Excellent. Hi, welcome. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Meredith?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. For those who are tuning in with us, I want to share. My name is Meredith Suttles. I'm the managing director here at Marin Theater Company, and I'm excited to be having this conversation with the wonderful and acclaimed playwright, director, all the multi-hyphenates, Lisa Peterson. But Lisa, can you just share a little bit about yourself, your history, and a little intro for those who may not know you?
Sure.
How I don't know how they could, but yes.
Well, gosh. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Peterson. I actually grew up south of the Bay Area in Santa Cruz, so I'm a Monterey County gal. But I live in New York City and have for. I was just figuring this out. I think I have to start saying 40 years. I've lived in New York because I moved there right out of college. Um, I am primarily a director, and I have directed quite a lot at Berkeley Rep. That has been my one of my artistic homes for quite a while. I was just saying to Meredith, I love working in the Bay Area. Um, I work as a director, I suppose, mostly known for working on new plays, but I really try to keep my hand in working on classics when I can. So Shakespeare when I can, and Shaw and that kind of thing. I love working on plays and musicals and projects that are difficult and sort of big idea pieces. I love language a lot, and one of the projects that I worked on starting in about 2003 with my writing partner Dennis O'Hare, who's also an actor, was an adaptation of the Iliad, Homer's Iliad, called An Iliad. And that kind of opened up for me my interest in adaptation, in writing adaptations, something that I had been interested in when I was really a young director coming out of college, but I had sort of set aside for a while. And I discovered that I really do. That's a part of making theater that I really do enjoy doing. So taking something that is a work of literature and sort of translating it for a theatrical experience. So when the opportunity or the idea kind of started to bubble up to tackle the Odyssey in a particular way, I was really excited.
Yes, I mean, you led us perfectly into to the next kind of moment that because we're so excited to be partnering with the and working in association with the acting company in New York to have your world premiere of your adaptation of the Odyssey here. It'll be our first show of the season, and we're really excited to have your work here. Can you just give us a little description of the show?
Sure. Well, I don't know. I feel like most people probably know something about Homer's Odyssey. It's known as kind of like one of the sort of foundational journey stories, sort of hero's journey. Homer is writing after the Trojan War about how one of the Greek commanders, one of the great Greek soldiers, Odysseus, how hard it is to find his way home to Ithaca, Greece, after the war. And I guess the first thing, when I was talking to the folks at the acting company just about ideas, things I was interested in, I guess the question came up about the Odyssey, and I thought because I had worked with Dennis on adapting the Iliad, it has always seemed like kind of an obvious question: why the Iliad? Why not the Odyssey? And I always felt a little I don't know. I wasn't that interested in the Odyssey originally, but I went to read a new translation that was done not that long ago. Now I'm thinking maybe 5 or 6 years ago, by Emily Wilson.
Mhm.
And she wrote this translation of the Odyssey. I think it's right to say that she's the sort of first notable English translation of the Odyssey written by a woman. And I just really liked the perspective that she brought to it. And she writes in a kind of free iambic pentameter. It's very speakable. It's very fun. And her translation was really made me aware of the sort of bigger, yes, the Odyssey is full of journeys and monsters. I mean, and adventures. But her translation really made me very aware of also some of the sort of social questions at the heart of the Odyssey, which for me started to poke out as questions of, I'm going to say hospitality. Like what does it mean to have someone visit you and treat them well? Someone who is on the journey trying to get home. Odysseus visits lots and lots of places, and in each one he has a different experience. It also is very much about what it means to be a good visitor and a good host. And I found that interesting. And then I started to realize that something that I'd always thought of as a very male story, like the male adventure story.
Exactly. Yes.
Was maybe not necessarily just male, because the whole thing is put in motion by a female goddess, Athena. There are lots of primary encounters with women who are powerful figures, women who either are the leader of their world, which is an island usually, or they are a witch. There's a famous witch in this story, or they are a monster. A lot of the monsters in the Odyssey are female. And I started to wonder what it would be like to tell the story in a female voice. And I meant using Emily's translation, but I also thought, what if the storytellers are not, there's no male storytellers? That led me to this idea of telling it in the voices of 4 young women. And then I don't know where this idea came from, but that I think because I had followed the news into, sort of during the Syrian crisis, I think that the Western news started to share with us what is still a kind of an ongoing, let's call it a migrant crisis in the Mediterranean, which is that people who are trying to mostly get to Europe from all parts of North Africa, the Middle East, in particular, in 2016, a lot of people were trying to leave Syria, and because they were in the middle of a really horrendous civil war. And this method of trying to having to leave your home for various reasons, economic or because it's dangerous, and try to get to a new home by means of getting on barely a boat and getting yourself toward Europe, started to line up for me in my head with the journey of Odysseus. And so that's what this adaptation is. It's told by 4 young women who find themselves in a refugee relocation center on the island of Lesbos. This is based on a real place called Moria, 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 on the island of Lesbos, and a lot of migrants spend some time there, more or less, depending on whether they have a place to go. But this idea of thinking of trying to get home, a journey home, when home is where you're headed, not where you've been. That's really my approach.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's amazing. And not to sound kind of trite in that, but I love the thought of the undercurrent of women in the story and how you've lifted that out so beautifully. And I'm so excited for people to see it. And that's one of the ways, reasons rather, why we were so excited to bring and have this story be a part of our season, and that that it's just such a unique way of telling a story that folks think they know, and this it's you don't it's a new way of looking at the story that we've all are familiar with in some way.
Yeah,
and
I
so,
hope so.
it's really,
And I knew that in talking to the acting company, that traditionally the acting company is about providing opportunities for young actors coming out of training programs to get up on stage in front of all kinds of different people, to tour works that are both classical and new, and so that idea of the young women telling this story, I guess, came partly from knowing that it was the acting company that this was going to be made for.
I think it's going to be, and going into kind of my excitement, but also wanting to hear yours. Part of the excitement about the show, and then you were speaking a little to it, is it's just the relevancy of it now. And so that's part of the excitement for me and MTC, and I'm sure the acting company could speak to that as well. But what would you say, is the excitement about this, telling this story now?
Well, on the one hand, I think it's a very theatrical story, and you already said this, but I think I think it's exciting to think people have encountered the Odyssey, however they have, in school. Maybe they love it. They've read all the translations, or, maybe they've read a graphic novel version of the Odyssey, or they've seen, I think there've been quite a few kind of interesting film adaptations. I've learned this from various casts that I've heard read this. There are video games based on characters in the Odyssey. Characters in the Odyssey and things that happen in the Odyssey are baked into our American culture.
Yes.
And yet this approach is in some ways trying to get us to also think about and gain empathy for the idea of people who are driven by one crisis or another to change homes. Now, we deal with that. We know that in this country, we aren't always empathetic, even though we are a country made of people who were on the move. Yeah. And arrived in one way or another, and built our communities. Yes. I don't think Americans are not always great hosts for visitors, or let's call them refugees or migrants. We're not always great visitors. So I think we're not always great hosts to those visitors. So really, I think it's worth considering that. But in this way, it's not on the nose. We're not talking about the border in the United States. Right. We're talking about something that's both ancient and also not ancient, because, even just last week, there was this story coming out of the Mediterranean about the ship, the Adriana, and the loss of lives on that ship. And so this is a constant issue for human beings to think about. What do we owe each other? We are, especially in terms of trying to find homes for ourselves and for each other, what responsibilities do we have? And so, unfortunately, I started thinking about this probably 4 years ago, and thought to myself, well, do I need to set it in 2016? Because that's when I started watching documentaries about the issue of migrants being lifted out of the Mediterranean or out of the Aegean by groups like Doctors Without Borders. And now, as of today, I think, no, it's now. It's got to be set right now, because this is ongoing. And I think theater is about building empathy. And so I hope it's a rousing adventure story, but I also think that it's going to just provoke conversation about responsibilities that we have to each other.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I couldn't, I agree. Empathy. That's beautiful. And I agree very much so. Yeah. So I think you talked a little bit about kind of what audience should expect from the story, but can you tell us, and I know we're, don't want to keep us here too long, but can you tell us a little bit about, we're getting ready to go, and we were just talking about that before we jumped on here, into the rehearsal process, and how are you approaching the process?
Right. Well, I've been working on writing the adaptation for a few years now, 2 or 3 years. And each, I'm probably up to my 5th or 6th draft. I find, because I am first a director, I still have trouble even saying that I'm a writer. I'm a director who likes to, put stories on stage. And sometimes that means I have to write some stuff, because I have an idea about
it's not there yet. Right, exactly. You have to write it because they haven't created it yet.
Maybe. Yeah. So that means that though I've been working and listening to people read it, and I learn a lot every time I hear a different group of actors read it, I learn more and more. But for me, I'm a rehearsal animal. I love being in the room with smart actors and a story and figuring it out in the room. So, and you're always kind of flying by the seat of your pants when you do that, because it means, I mean, I don't really like planning in advance. So I have to, because we have to do that. But I'm really interested to go into the rehearsal. I know, like, okay, we're going to have so many chairs. We're going to have a small number of chairs. We're going to have a table or two. We're going to have in this space. It's set, in a sort of temporary installation on this Greek island, where these young women are waiting to be processed, basically onto their next stop. They've been rescued, and now they need to be sent on toward Berlin, or to the UK, or to Turkey, and they don't know where they're going next. And they've kind of, in a way, it's a realistic setting, but it's also not. When I've talked to the designers, we've been talking about this idea of having a common dream, literally, like 4 people in a space together, having what is a dream or a nightmare of the same type, sort of like Sartre's No Exit, where, yes. I mean, that's a kind of limbo state. That's where I think these young women are. They're kind of in a limbo state together. They find themselves together, and to pass the time and kind of lift their own spirits, one of them has this waterlogged copy of the Odyssey, and they start to act it out. And it's kind of like one long night where they kind of go through the journey together until they get separated. So how will we build it in rehearsal? I mean, there's a text. I've been working on it. I have an amazing group of collaborators, designers, composer Mari Asare is writing some music for us, and we are nearly cast, 4 amazing young women, and I think we will start to play, and I have some ideas about how the space is transformed, how the actors transform themselves, because they all share the role of Odysseus. This, I guess I should say that is one of the original ideas, was that 4 young women passing a blanket and a staff around so that they each take a turn playing the hero. And so I know some things that will happen, and other things I'm going to build it in the room with these young women. So yeah, it's pure theater.
You took the words out of my, I was like, that's the beauty of theater.
Yeah. How do we do it? How do we tell the story? Yeah.
Yeah, coming together. I love that collaboration.
There's a lot of boat building. I mean, because there's a lot of traveling. There's, I think, in the version that I'm doing, there's 3 or 4 ship journeys: a raft, a boat, a ship. There's a number of storms and shipwrecks that have to happen. There's all sorts. There's a Cyclops. There's a encounter with Calypso. And so there's a certain kind of theatricality, but everything wants to be made from what the young women might find in that room and in their backpacks. So I always like I like storytelling with limitation. That's always kind of fun as a director. Yeah. How do we make a Cyclops out of what we have?
Right. Oh, yeah. It's going to be phenomenal. We cannot wait to bring the story to life here at MTC and with the acting company. So I want to thank you so much for taking time. Y'all, she's really jumped in. She's in tech right now, so she's come and done this for us, and so really excited to have you. Thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with me about what audience can expect. I want to thank, of course, all of the folks who've joined us in this moment in our live, and invite you, if you haven't already subscribed to our season, please do. The link is in the bio, in the chat somewhere. You'll be able to find the link where you are, and make sure you get priority seating, because Odyssey is not something you want to miss, and we have such an amazing season planned for you. And thank you again, Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. So